What's going on, fellas? This is Mike D, Mr. Double Down on You with another episode of Black Fathers Now. Now, I'm going to tell you, 2021, I'm really jumping into hyper focus on Black men that really exemplify excellence. So Black male excellence is what we're really hyper focused on in 2021. We've already done that, but we really are stepping the game up this year. And the brother that I have right now is the embodiment of Black male excellence. This brother is a father. He's a sewing enthusiast. Yeah, I said sewing enthusiast. And he's the genius behind Daddy Dressed Me by Michael Gardner. So obviously, I'm talking to my man, Michael Gardner. 6 years ago, he began his sewing journey as a way to bond with his daughter, but then to also help her build self-esteem. And when I saw this story, when I catch a little bit of what he had going on and started diving into it on Instagram, I was like, yeah, I got to dive in and talk to this brother. So fellas and ladies listening too, because y'all chime into what we're talking about, let's welcome my man, Michael Gardner. How you doing, brother?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Man, no doubt, brother, man. Like I said, when I think about excellence, when I think about like unique stories and journeys, you literally like hit both of those. It's like the crosshairs of that hit directly and landed with, Daddy Dressed Me by Michael Gardner. So I appreciate you for taking time out of your schedule, brother.
No problem at all.
No doubt, no doubt. And before we get started, I always have the brothers give shout outs because the reality is, who are we without the folks that basically serve as the wind beneath our wings, that support us, that, give us the flexibility and the freedom to go and do what it is we do on a daily basis. So before we jump into your story and your journey, give some shout outs, brother.
Well, first and foremost, I got to shout out my family. Always kind of showing up, supporting me, encouraging me, not even being surprised by some of the great things I've been able to accomplish. Also my fiance, Tama, just literally just probably my biggest source of encouragement. Definitely more recently, having that person to kind of turn to and, talk through things when, I'm kind of trying to process everything and figure things out. She's been great, just kind of supporting me along this journey. And of course, my daughter, I call her my muse. Like she literally, just always encouraging, always loving, caring. She was literally right before I, jumped on this call, like, Daddy, you're going to do great. Like, good luck when you're in. So definitely got to shout her out, of course.
Dude, that's powerful. And you mentioned the concept of your daughter encouraging you through the process. And like I mentioned in the in the intro, you mentioned that you started sewing to create a bond, but to help her build her self-esteem. But then it's funny, you just mentioned that she's giving you little jolts of inspiration to help build your self-esteem prior to you doing something. It's amazing how that happens, right?
Yes. So what I learned through this journey and this entire process, my desire to kind of teach her and encourage her and to help build her confidence and self-esteem, I actually learned how to do that for myself through trying to teach her. I had my, own personal struggles with my childhood, being abandoned and, having a rocky relationship with my mom. And then through that process with her, she started reciprocating the things that I was doing, telling me, she started encouraging me, literally just giving everything back that I was giving her. She gave it back to me. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, that's when I kind of really, truly started feeling like I was actually worthy of that type of encouragement, that type of love and support that I didn't really get when I was a kid. So that was like that first moment where I was like, okay, I kind of didn't realize that going in, but, I left, those moments just like really sitting to myself and understanding what actually was happening. And this was around when she was like, she was still younger, maybe around 4, when she started like just saying things back. And now she's 9, and everything we do, we bounce that energy off of each other.
That's interesting, man. Like, when you said that, it made me think about the Maya Angelou quote of when you get, give, when you learn, teach. right?
Mm.
And when I think about the concept of when you get, give, and when you learn, teach, it's always about sharing with someone else. And, you know, a lot of like motivational speakers and coaches, you know, a lot of them really put out there that if something is going wrong or is challenging in your life, go find somebody to help. Like if you go find somebody to help, that in turn sometimes becomes the fuel that you need to pull yourself out of what it is you're dealing with. And it's funny, not funny, but it's interesting that you mentioned that about your story, in the sense that, you know, when you were seeking to help your daughter, she in
Mm.
turn turned back around to help you.
Help
And it
me.
was like, I'm putting it all on to help,
Right.
but I'm actually getting helped in the process.
Right.
It's a powerful concept, isn't it?
Yeah, like it's yeah, so when I knew I always knew I wanted to be a dad.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so when the opportunity presented itself, I was like, I definitely knew there were a list of things that I knew I wanted to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
Things that I, you know, struggled through in my childhood. So communication was one. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make sure that any kid I had knew that they could come talk to me, that we could, um, you know, talk through things, find resolution. Because I grew up just kind of holding everything in, not really having the opportunities to say how I truly felt.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Quality time was another one. So me and Ava we've pretty much been inseparable since she was born.
Mm. Wow.
So that's another huge one. Um, and then yeah, that belief in whatever you want to do, you can truly achieve. And even if you don't succeed, okay, maybe you got to shift, pivot, but you know, you're not allowed to quit. So like we don't say can't. Can't is not in our vocabulary.
Mm.
If she, you know, I tell her, say you want to learn it. Um, you know, if you don't succeed the first time, you can do better the next time. But we just don't say can't. And then anytime either of us slip and say it, we kind of check each other like, hey, you said
Mm.
can't, you know. So yeah, these were all things that I knew I wanted as a kid. So I had to figure out how to actually instill that in the relationship that I have with her.
Mm.
Um, and it's been amazing because from focusing on those things, the things that I wanted as a kid, I absolutely have in my relationship with Ava.
Service. You know, it's like when you think about the concept of service, you know, that's what you're talking about. Like, how do you serve? You know, when you serve well, other people are the beneficiaries. But the
Right.
thing is, if you're a person who is a natural giver, you also find joy in the giving. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I'm gonna tell you, it's interesting, even thinking about that in my own personal life. You know, I like to give. Like I'm the one that enjoys watching people benefit from something that I do, right? Like giving. But I also have had a problem historically with being a receiver, meaning I like to give, but if somebody tries to give me something back, you know, I'll try to like, oh no, you keep it, or no, I'll give it to somebody
Yeah.
else. And the thing that was interesting, somebody had to call me out once and they said, dude, to be a good giver, you have to also be a good receiver, because the joy that you get from giving, other people get that same joy from giving to you. So you can't block that feeling as well. And so it's one of those scenarios in which it shows how this thing is cyclical and it
Mm.
comes full circle. But you're not starting with the I'm giving to get. I'm just
Right.
giving, but realizing that there's going to be somebody in the ecosystem, whether it's the person I'm giving to or not, that's going to end up giving back, and we all benefit from it. But it's starting off with that spirit of service.
Yeah, I've been yeah, that's for me the biggest part of like kind of giving is been using my creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, like since I was younger. So creating cards, artwork, poetry. Um, so it was kind of twofold. It was a way to express myself, but also I wanted people to know how I felt about them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I too struggle with the receiving.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like, yeah, I'm wired to just be like, oh, you need this, here you go. But I've also had to learn how to kind of manage that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to not like giving too much of myself and not having nothing left for, me when I need to be able to rely on myself for, various reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, and that's kind of where me and Ava's relationship kind of works best, where through that relationship with her, I've learned that, yeah, it's okay to receive a compliment. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to have somebody offer to do something for you, and you actually can just sit and chill for a second. Like, and she's always doing that. Like, again, she's always reciprocating, what I do for her. So with her, and then it kind of helped with my relationship where I'm like, okay, my fiance is always offering to help me do something. And early on, I'll be like, no, that's okay. I got it. But even with her, I had to learn, like, yeah, it's okay for her to actually help you. It's okay for her to step in at times. Now, when it comes to like creativity and stuff, no, like it's literally like sacred to me. So I don't really like let up on that side of it. But just in life in general, yeah, like I've had to learn that process too, that it's completely okay.
Well, and I'm gonna tell you, the thing that got me was, thinking about, you have to think about it in ways that resonate with you. And the thing that resonated with me was the fact that I was blocking them of that blessing of being able to give to me. Like that was the thing. So it wasn't about, me just being, okay, I can just lay back and kick my feet up and chill. It was the fact that the joy that I feel by giving to somebody, I'm denying somebody else that same joy because they want to do that for me. And it comes off simply sometimes when people will say like, man, you looking good today, looking good today. And you respond with, man, I ain't looking as good as you. It's like a natural response, right? Like, I'm trying to get on your level. Like, no, dude, why can't I just say, hey man, thank you. Appreciate it. Like, it's like a natural thing of you got to give it back, So just allow yourself to thank you. And again, I'm a work in progress, player. I'm a work in progress, player. So thinking about this, so in again, where you've created the muse of sewing, or you've gone into the muse of sewing, but you talked about growing up, this whole creativity was always there with artwork and all of that. Talk to us a little bit about, and you mentioned some of your backstory, and, there were some challenges which, kind of caused you to have things bottled up and all. But talk to us a little bit about some of the inspirations along your journey that led you to specifically sewing. Like, again, that ain't, just full transparency, that ain't something most brothers get into. You know what I'm saying? And so what throughout your life led you down this path of saying, yo, I'm going to create dresses and I'm going to do sewing and create stuff for my little girl?
So, yeah, again, like my creativity, I always say creativity saved my life. I grew up living in my grandmom's home. My mom was a nurse, worked, 10, 12-hour shifts most of the time. And my father didn't raise me. So, I kind of found that connection with my grandma. I'm talking with her, sitting with her. But as I grew, I started watching the effects of like growing up without a father with my cousins. Them trees, they kind of, many of them were angry and frustrated and turned to like physically fighting and still just, the stuff that just don't take you down the right path. They turned in that direction, and I'm watching all of this and like, well, I want something different. So that's where the creativity came in, where I just started sitting and writing and coloring and drawing. And through that process, it always helped me to kind of clear my mind. And I also focused a lot on school, was always a straight A, few B student. That was like, so I was just constantly seeking outlets to kind of do what I was internalizing. When I got, older, I was just trying everything. So when I became a dad, I was sitting there, I'm like, okay, I need something new. I need a new challenge. And now I have a daughter that I actually want to bond with. Like, what am I going to do? My sister so actually the sewing goes back because my grandma used to sew for my mom, my aunts. But nobody kind of took it over after she had did it. Mom bought a sewing machine and she was going to make her nursing uniforms, never opened the box. My sister got it and just started, she would get like sweatshirts and hoodies, and she would change out the sleeves with like these really cool fabrics. It was just so unique to me. So I'm watching her do it, and I'm like, wait a minute, I think I want to actually try this. So she was like, all right, went to YouTube, started watching videos, and she went with me to Walmart, got me the sewing machine, and I literally just took off from there. So I started by buying, I was thrifting women's clothing. and I would upcycle it to, kind of scale it down to Ava size, because I had no prior experience. This is my first time behind a sewing machine. I didn't want to go out and, spend money on fabrics that
That's
I
right.
didn't know what to do with yet.
That's right. That's right.
Um, so I started there and kind of built my confidence up from there. I think that spring, I went crazy, went out and bought fabrics, and I just started sitting down and just creating. And I was working full time. So I would get off work, pick her up, do what I need to do for her, start sewing.
Mm.
And I sat in my living room for a couple weeks and kind of put together a whole collection for her.
Mm. And
So
how old was she then? How old was she at that time?
she was 3.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So this was at the very beginning. And I challenged myself and I said, I'm not going to buy her anything for spring or summer. I'm going to make all of her clothing.
Whoa,
And
hold up. See, we have to jump into that mindset there, because, you have some people who are like, okay, I dip my toe in, or I sample it, or I do a little bit. You just went straight forward and said, I ain't buying no clothes in the spring or summer. I'm making everything. Like, that's going from 0 to 100 like that.
Right.
Where does that, like, have you always been I'm all in or I'm all out? Where did that come from? Because, that's something for the brothers listening to pay attention to. A lot of times we want to dip our toe in, but sometimes you just got to jump into the deep end and say, man, I'm going all in. I ain't buying no clothes. Talk to me about that mindset right quick.
So I was literally just telling my fiance this a couple weeks ago. I am all in or all out. There's no, especially with things that are important to me, there's no gray area.
Oh, wow.
So, when I started it, it was more so just about, again, the seeking of the creative challenge.
Mm-hmm.
I think what fueled me to go to that point, it was the feeling that I got behind sitting at this sewing machine. Through all of the crafts that I've done and everything that I've tried, there was nothing that gave me that feeling with sewing. And I think it's driven by the ability to kind of have an idea or a concept and to see it through the entire process, and I'm responsible for it. And then the end result is that I'm getting to see it on my daughter. That's what kind of fuels me to this day. When I sit down and create.
I got a question there. So it's funny. Again, I think nothing happens by chance. I think all these things are kind of orchestrated. Do you think growing up, that was something that you struggled with from the standpoint of basically conceptualizing something and bringing it to life? And the moment that you were able to do that, it was like the aha moment came. It's basically like the light bulb went off and you came to realize that was your thing, because all along I wanted to create something. I wanted to build something. I wanted to, and that's something that I needed from a confidence perspective. Do you feel like there's some strands of that there?
Definitely. Yeah, so kind of, and that's another thing. So through this entire journey, I've also been processing. So when I sit at the sewing machine, I'm thinking, I'm processing things. It's, again, the creativity is kind of where it's therapeutic for me.
Yes.
So I still process things from my childhood, still sit back and kind of examine why I think the way that I think, why do things the way that I do things. So yeah, because that thread is kind of been throughout my life. So it came when, I knew I wanted to be a father. I wanted to be married. I wanted to be in the household. So literally trying to build everything I didn't have in my childhood, trying to piece that all together and figure it out to create that for my own life. So yeah, it definitely kind of brought some things together. And then once I kind of had that feeling, I was like, oh, I don't want to lose this. So that's why 6 years later, we're still doing it. I don't sew in that way like I used to. Where I said I was in my my living room for 2 weeks and got everything done. Because obviously now things have shifted. Ava's older. So, I still have to make time for her and figuring out, just life in general. But every time I kind of have this, the way my mind works is I'll have an idea, and until I process it and figure out how I'm going to do it, it just sticks with me. It's constantly living. It reshuffles. until I've created it and get it out of my system, it's there.
Ooh, hold on, pause right there. I think that's an important nugget for the brothers to pay attention to. You know, when you have that thing burning inside of you, when you have that fire burning, you know, for some of us, we try to say, you know what, if I can't bring it to life, I'll just put that fire out. You're the one that says, no. This fire is gonna burn until it burns the doggone house down. Right. I gotta bring it out. I gotta bring something to fruition. And I think so many of us, especially Black men, have these fires burning. We have this thing inside of us that we want to create, and we suppress it. We say It's not possible. We're like, okay, you know what? I got other things going on in life, so I'll put it on the back burner, and we never get to it. And the thing is, there's this regret if you don't try something. And if you talk to a lot of people, even if folks have failed on things, at least they know that, you know what, I tried it. It's not on this back burner. It's not this woulda, coulda, shoulda. I'm not 75 years old looking back saying, man, 30 years ago, I should have tried this thing, or I should have said this, or I should have tried to create it, because you don't want to have regrets. So if you got that fire, fellas, listening to Michael's story, if you have that fire right now, something inside of you, don't let it just sit there. Don't put a cap on it. Don't put it on the back burner. Figure out a way to bring that thing to life. If it works, awesome. If it doesn't work, at least you know you tried.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because I saw so much of that growing up. People in my family, friends, families, just pure talent, have gifts, and fear just won't allow them to try it. Like that fear of failing just will not allow them to actually just to go for it. I started with no experience, and I've made plenty of mistakes. One of the first like shirts that I made, Ava, I cut it out the wrong way. So where the stretch of the fabric should go left and right, to how you naturally move, it was vertical. Okay. So when she put the shirt on, she couldn't move, and I was like, oh, like
you done made your baby a straitjacket.
Right. I was like, oh, like, okay. So that taught me, okay, be more conscious of the direction of your fabrics. Like, make sure, and it to this day, that moment is in my head. So whenever I lay any fabric down, I test to see which way is the stretch going. So, you're going to make mistakes. Especially if you're learning something, kind of from scratch. Like,
yes.
I say, like, my life has literally been trial and error. A lot that I've experienced, I wasn't sat down and taught. No one had conversations with me about certain things. So it's been the drive for me to just like, this is the life I want for myself, and I don't know how I'm going to get it, but I'm going to step by step figure it all out. And I've had moments where things didn't work out. I was married and got a divorce. Like, I had to go through that process. So where my vision started in being married, being in the same household, raising kids together, to now we co-parent together. So, and it didn't mean that I was any less of a father, any less of a man, which, I mean, I had to go through that process to figure that part out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just shifted things. So I realized all of my experiences kind of put me in the position to, one, be who I am, and everything that I am is exactly what my daughter needs. Like, we have conversations that if I didn't have certain experiences, I don't know if I could support her through some of those conversations.
That's deep. Whoa, pause there, because that's another gem, brother. Like, literally, see, we have a natural tendency to want things to be comfortable. We have a natural tendency to want things to be smooth. We, everybody wants things to be balanced. Like, you hear everybody say, oh, find balance. What you come to realize, balance in essence is a farce in the moment, right? Balance is false in the moment, because in the moment you're all in or you're all out, right? What ends up happening is, if you do all in and all out on whatever you're doing, if you do it throughout a week over 7 days, when you look back, you're like, okay, I spent equal time on all these things throughout the week over 7 days. My life looks balanced when I look back. But in the moment, it's never balanced. We see that. And that's the funny thing about it. It's like, we look for balance, but the reality is we're never balanced in the moment. right?
Right.
It's only balanced when we look back and say, for 2 years I did this, for 2 years I did that, and for 2 years I did that. Over a 6-year period, I was balanced. No, you weren't.
Right.
You was all in
Right.
in the moment, right? And so I said all of that to say, we have to go through these twists and turns, these ups and downs, and the challenges, because the challenges then, like you said, give you the experience, they give you the ability to then deal with the other things that are coming, but then to also serve as an example for your kids or whoever else you encounter. And if you didn't go through the challenges, you wouldn't be equipped to deal with that. So don't think negatively about the challenges, fellas. If you're listening to
Right.
Michael's story, those things are all part of the story, but they're not the end of the story.
Right. Yeah, that's so I always like kind of just look back at kind of like where I like, my mindset when I became a father to where I am now. Because it's so interesting to me that the main thing that I identified as like my, kind of biggest struggle, which was obviously being abandoned by my father, to now, be put in kind of the spotlight mainly for being a father.
Ooh, ooh.
Yeah.
You mean, again, I don't know what your beliefs are. But they say the Lord works in mysterious ways. You know what I'm saying? And it's funny, to your point, a challenge of being abandoned by your father, or the feeling of being abandoned by your father. And now you are Daddy Dressed Me by Michael Gardner. I just saw some big thing from Facebook that was highlighting you on some unique thing.
Yeah.
I was just like, yo, you're now being highlighted as a father, but
Yeah.
challenge growing up was feeling abandoned by your father.
Right. So I say that God turned my pain and turned it and fueled it into power, because that, that feeling that I felt growing up and just, it's, again, it still fuels me today. I just was never the guy that was like, I'm not going to be like my father. I never walked around saying that. I'm a believer in, like, what you give energy to is what you actually experience.
Yes.
So there was never a thought in my mind that I wasn't going to be there for Ava. I wasn't going to figure out, this whole process. Even with, when me and her mom decided to separate, first thing I said was, I want equal time. Like, I didn't want to I didn't feel like I could have the impact that I wanted to have and build a bond with her just having, every other weekend or anything like that. Like, again, we had already bonded and been inseparable for 2 years at that time. So yeah, that feeling still burns in me to this day. Now, at one point in my life, when I was around like 20, I was still in college. I think I was like 21, 22. I actually, got connected with my father. Because the odd thing is, when it comes to my dad, is that my dad's mom and my mom's mom lived on the same block, 3 houses apart.
Wow.
So that's how my mom and my dad met. Like, our families just, my aunts and uncles on my mom's side and my uncles on my dad's side were all friends. Kind of, that's how my mom and them connected. So there were times where I seen him, was in his face speaking, he wouldn't acknowledge me. He got married and had 2 stepdaughters. They came knocking on the door saying, "Where's my brother?" Then he had a son with his wife. So now I have a brother, and later found out I had another sister. So, I at one point just decided to write him a letter, sat down with him, because I was like going through it. I just felt like I didn't really know who I was, or at least that side of me.
Yes.
So yeah, I sat down with him, and that first conversation, it wasn't even about like what he was saying. Something just connected for me where I was like, okay, I'm looking at him and his mannerisms. I'm seeing little things that he does, and I'm like, okay, this is where all of this kind of like parts of my personality, like, this is the side that comes from you, because I'm, the way he's talking with his hands, the way my stepmom pointed out, she was like, yeah, you and your dad scratch your head the same exact way. Like, it was so interesting to have mannerisms and traits of a person that you never spent any time around. I'm very smart, but I can also go to that point where, I'm a know-it-all. Can't nobody tell me nothing. I get
Mm-hmm.
that from like,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, that moment of kind of just sitting down, I think from that point on, I was like, okay, I felt like I was good. Like I got, it really wasn't for me about why he wasn't president or anything. It was just trying to answer that question of who I am.
That's deep.
So yeah, once I sat down and kind of, talk with him, I was like, okay, I got pretty much have everything that I need.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then it took a turn for the worse because we ended up right where we were in the first place. So now we don't have a relationship, we don't communicate.
Mm-hmm.
But just having that moment to kind of sit, talk it out, think things through, and actually knowing that I attempted to build a relationship
Mm-hmm.
with was really enough for me.
Mm. And that gives you peace, right? Because, it goes back. We mentioned earlier about you don't want to have regrets in life, right?
Mhm.
And you hear situations and challenges where people have, and I mean, unfortunately, a lot of times is, guys and their fathers or people with their fathers, they have issues in which they don't talk, they don't communicate. And then fast forward a few decades and somebody passes away. And then
Right.
it's I never got a chance to. And whether they verbally put that out there for the world to hear or not, inside of them, they always know that I never got a chance to get these questions answered. I never made the effort. Whether they wanted to connect or not, I never made that effort. So therefore, I'm holding on to this thing, whether I tell people about it or not, and that impacts how I operate. So to your point, I applaud you for taking the initiative to at least do that. Whether it turned out a certain way or not, you can't control the outcome. The only thing
Right.
you can control is what you did, which was write the letter, initiate it, try it, and you got what you needed from the situation. But you can also have peace in your life knowing that, hey, I made the effort.
Right. Yeah, that the point you just made was exactly why I did it. Like I didn't want to one, keep carrying the feelings, the emotions, and realizing like, okay, I do have the power to try to do something about this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, when I sat down, wrote the letter, and then mailed it, I was just anxious the whole time. I didn't know if I was going to hear from him or not.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, part of it was therapeutic because I got to kind of release everything that, I was feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like, and then two, I'm glad I did it too, because when I became a father, I didn't want to carry so much of this stuff that I can't actually now parent the child that, I have responsibility for.
Woo! Oh, dude, you dropped the gem there. But it's like, think about, I'm gonna use an analogy. You think about like carrying grocery bags in, or you carrying a lot of luggage and all your hands are full. If all your hands are full, you don't have the hands to hold your baby.
Yeah.
And so when you got all this baggage that you've not let go, it's like you walking down the street with 30 grocery bags in your hands and your little girl sitting there with her arms up wanting you to pick her up. So you
Right.
got two choices. You can either drop those bags and pick your baby up, or you can tell your baby to hold on.
Right.
And so to your point, that was such a poignant example. And I think, brothers, we need to listen to that. How, as far as being husbands, as far as being fathers, as far as being businessmen, being whatever it is we're doing in life, we are limited if we got our hands full with all this baggage. We got to find a way to let that stuff go so that we can free our hands up, so that our hands are free to then do what we need to do. And sometimes it's simply to pick our little baby up, or to hug our wife, or to grab our son, or to do what it is we have to do. But we got to be mindful of that, brother. That's a gem.
Yeah, like as time goes on and you realize, especially for me, one of the biggest concerns I had was, and it's with anything, life, career,
Mhm.
when you're put in position to do something, when you get a new job, one of the questions you're assured is that you're going to get some sort of training.
Mhm.
Uh,
Ooh.
and experience, there is no training, or
Mm.
hopefully you've got, the experience with your father who's, some men have had the experience of having their father, but still have to unlearn some of the things they were taught too.
Mm.
Um, I was on a clubhouse call the other day on Monday night,
Mhm.
and the call was about like dad influencers and how we can kind of work together to get the images out there and work with brands and stuff. And the conversation shifted to like some of our experiences growing up without our fathers. And there was a dad on there who actually said he grew up with his father, but I think, you know, their relationship wasn't necessarily the best.
Mm-hmm.
And he said some of you that didn't have your fathers are at an advantage, because he said you're fathering from a place of not knowing what, maybe you didn't get what you felt like you should have gotten, but you're trying your best to give that to your kid, versus being in a position where you kind of have your father and the relationship isn't great and you're taught things that aren't going to actually help you.
Ooh, you know, nobody's perfect, first off. That's one, right? I mean, no matter how great of a father we are, great of a husband, great of a man, businessman, whatever, nobody is perfect, right? That's step one. And but perfection's not a requirement for greatness. I'll say that as well. But I'll also say having versus not having, I would also say that there's always an opportunity for redemption, right? So even if you have that father who is an imperfect individual, who may have taught you the wrong stuff, may have done things that you're not proud of, and had challenging circumstances, and maybe even taught you things that you didn't need to know, there's always that possibility for redemption, and that person is still present. So I always see that as an opportunity for hope, or there's that chance in which things can turn, versus not even having that opportunity. And so I get where the brother's coming from, but I also would counter that by saying there's still that chance for redemption with that person being present.
Right. Yeah. So what I took away from that whole conversation, because for me, like, there aren't a lot of dads that I communicate with.
Mm-hmm.
So when things come up for me, I'm usually trying to figure it out for myself, or I'm looking somewhere for resources to kind of maybe reshift my focus. Or I think the benefit of having other dads to talk to is you get different perspectives.
Dude, check this out. Hold on. We're changing all that right now. You're now part of the Black Fathers Now family. Right. Me and you are connected. So don't ever think that you ain't got some dads to talk to, brother, because you connected now.
Yeah, and that's one of the benefits of actually kind of sharing my experience too, is that I've been mainly through like Instagram or even Facebook. Like, for me, it's huge to kind of see the images, the videos of men with their kids. That helps me and inspires me and encourages me. Even the conversations of us caring for ourselves, like, you know, you get into a mode where you want to make sure your family is good and they have everything that they need. But then, you know, and I went through this when I was married, like, just get going, giving, and not stopping to actually say, okay, how, like, checking on myself.
Yes.
How am I doing? What do I need? Like, so that was another thing that I kind of had to learn. But, you know, for me, I just try to maintain focus on what my intentions are and what it is that I want to actually, you know, help Ava learn. I'd sprinkle in life lessons to pretty much everything that we do.
Yes.
And in some sort of way to where, you know, sometimes it goes deep. Sometimes it's just a quick little, you know, a little blurb, like, you know, like for example, a couple of weeks ago, we were playing Uno, and Ava is very competitive. So, which I feel like that's going to, you know, that's going to be one of the things that takes her somewhere in life. But we were playing Uno, and, you know, she got her hand, and I think the first card she put out was a draw 4. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna draw my 4, but listen, I was like, you have to learn to like strategize, especially with that card. Like I said, sometimes a person might be ready to go out. You have that ready. Now they can't go out when they, you know, after they or whatever. So she said, okay, daddy. 2 hands later, she did exactly that. I called Uno. She throws down the draw 4. So, you know, I know that I have her attention when I'm speaking. I know that she trusts me. I know that she's listening. And more than anything, what I'm saying, she's watching me.
Yes. Yes.
That's the biggest part.
Yes.
So I'm always just, you know, conscious of what I'm, you know, how I'm speaking, how I'm treating people in front of her. As we do interviews, she's saying, like, I just want to be like daddy. And it's, you know, in part it's the creativity, but what I love is that she speaks on who I am as a person. She talks about how I treat people, how I'm always positive, how I'm always encouraging, that I never give up. Like I'm always giving my all. So, and those aren't things that I'm saying directly to her, like, learn this from me. That's from her being around, being present, and actually observing what it is that I'm doing.
Yes.
So, in those moments when I don't know what she's going to say, when she comes out and says those things, I'm like, okay, I'm definitely doing what I'm supposed to be doing. That it's what she's seeing is impacting her in a positive way. And that's, one of the most important things for me.
What she's seeing is impacting her. Again, I use this in numerous episodes, numerous interviews, but there's a poem by Langston Hughes called Live Your Creed. And the first stanza states, I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day.
Right.
The last stanza states, for I may misunderstand you in the fine advice you give, but there's no misunderstanding how you act and how you live. And what you're talking about right there is the embodiment of that particular poem, Live Your Creed, because it's all about making sure your words and your actions map to each other. And then when they're watching you, then it's not that whole I saw daddy, but he told me, and they're having to, in their mind, try to make connections, figure things out. They're like, no, what daddy said is what daddy's doing,
Right.
And so when I say it is reinforcement behind what I'm doing, because they're watching what I do. And we have to be mindful of that as fathers, as men, and not even just as fathers, but when we're out in public, when people see us, actions speak louder than words. How are you treating? Did you hold the door for that person? Did you do this? Like, how are you treating people in business? How are you treating people? If there's an issue with an order, do you, cuss the customer out and this and that, or do you find a way to find a solution? I mean, there are all these little things that are examples of how we show. And, you doing what you're doing is a full testament to helping to be that example. And I salute you, brother. That's awesome.
Thank you.
No doubt, man.
That's deep.
That is deep. Yeah, literally, it's called Live Your Creed by Langston Hughes. Like, it's powerful, man. So now, Daddy Dress Me by Michael Gardner. How is this thing kind of grown and taken shape? Like, talk to us a little bit about this particular movement and what you're doing with Daddy Dress Me.
So yeah, the purpose behind it was always, again, to teach Ava about confidence, self-love, to believe in herself. The first time we went out, she just naturally had this, like I say, I have the gift creating. She just naturally has energy and can model. Her little post, like, that was all her. So, now it's grown to, one is grown to something that encourages and uplifts other people. Like, I get DMs and now I'm getting emails too, every single day, where people are reminded of their mom. I'm even hearing about other dads that sold for their kids, like, that many of us don't know about, but apparently there are other dads that did it, maybe just weren't, actually publicly sharing it. They're being reminded of, powerful moments and special moments in their childhoods through sewing. It's really allowed me to connect with all people from all walks of life and locations through just sewing mainly. And then some people just enjoy seeing, us as father and daughter. So yeah, it's been a blessing to just kind of share our bond, but also, like, I shared some of our conversations and my experiences. I started sharing, before I was even sewing, I started sharing, my fatherhood experience, just because I always felt like there was going to be a dad that was similar to me that became a dad, didn't have that, and they're like, what am I supposed to do? So for me, I just started with obviously being present, showing love and affection, before she could even speak, just being there. And just sharing that, to progressing to when she got older, started taking her on daddy-daughter dates, like focusing on making sure she knows how she should be treated and, all of that. And then it shifted to the creativity, being added into it. And now, us kind of being you know, being put in the forefront because one, we're dad and daughter, one, I'm sewing, and, you know, people are just impacted by seeing us. So I'm extremely proud that I can create stuff that makes people feel something.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody feels something different. Um, but yeah, I feel like there's, you know, there's so much power in that. So, you know, like I said, I've been doing this for the last 6 years, but last year, 2020, is when things really started really shifting, where, you know, we were in a sewing magazine, then we obviously ended up on TV, and that kind of shifted things even more. Like, I wasn't prepared for that to happen. My focus has obviously been on my relationship with Ava, and, you know, yeah, just this process of creating.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm in a position to kind of truly shift it into something else that, you know, I wasn't planning on. So I'm actually in the process of kind of figuring that out as we go.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've worked full time this entire time. I was laid off in March of last year, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
many in the country because of the pandemic. So obviously the first thing I thought was to go straight to the sewing machine, because I'm like, that's my therapy. That's what kind of gets
Mm-hmm.
me through. Ava came to me about TikTok. So that's where, you know, we started doing the TikTok, and I'm learning like how great of a dancer she is. And, you know, we would do little skits where she would be acting. And I'm like, this little girl is, you know, has like pure talent.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, now like so that's kind of another way we've bonded and, you know, and spent our time together. But yeah, like so this year I'm looking to figure out the other goals that I have and the things that I want to do, like to actually start focusing more on that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah,
Now, is there like a product line, or do you have clothes that are for sale from, you know, Daddy Dress Me, or is that something that's potentially in the future, or what's going on with that?
so the actual clothing that I sew, no, I don't sell that.
Okay.
I tried that a couple years ago. It is That's not where my passion lies.
Okay. Okay.
It took something out of the experience for me trying to create for, you know, to sell for other people. But what I did last year was, so I launched my blog and my shop where, um, you know, because of the attention and wanting to actually give something back to people, because they, you know, are in some way kind of invested in my creativity and what
Yes.
we do. I created like apparel that celebrates sewing. So
Mm-hmm.
hoodies, t-shirts, at buttons, embroidery patches, hats. So I launched that last year, I think in September.
Mm-hmm.
So that's doing pretty well. Um, but yeah, so I'll probably infuse daddy daughter stuff into that, but
Mm-hmm.
actually sitting and sewing
Gotcha.
for people, that I won't be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely hope to like design a line one day.
Well, yeah, and then hope to do nothing. You're going to design a line one day.
Right.
Something by Michael Gardner, you know, Daddy Dress Me by Michael Gardner. Something's gonna pop in
Right.
regards to that, because brother, you're doing the doggone thing. And the biggest thing is like, I am so impressed with the fact that you identified something inside of you, this fire that was burning, and you didn't rest until you started pouring gasoline on that thing. And
Right.
you're allowing it to burn, you're allowing it to come to fruition, and you're impacting thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people in the
Mm-hmm.
process, on top of being an amazing dad. And you said fiance, so you're getting married too sometime soon, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yep.
an amazing dad and a fiance, and brother, keep doing the doggone thing.
Thank you.
No doubt, man. And now, is there, you know, as we kind of close this thing out, is there anything else that you'd like to leave with the Black Fathers Now family?
I just want to say, you know, especially to the dads, just keep showing up, keep being present. Um, you know, love on your kids, especially now with everything that's going on in this world.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hug your kids, give them kisses, tell them you love them. Make sure there's no confusion or no doubt on how, you know, that they know that how you feel about them. Because, you know, tomorrow's not promised. So
Mm.
yeah, and your loved ones too, not even just your kids, just your loved ones in general.
Make the most of those moments, man. Make the
Yes.
most of those moments. And how can folks follow you, man? What's the best way for them to connect with you?
So at Daddy Dressed Me by MG on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Facebook is Daddy Dressed Me by Michael Gardner. And my website is Daddy Dressed Me by MG as well.
Okay. So fellas, I'll have all of that in the show notes. Instagram, Daddy Dress Me by MG. On Facebook is Daddy Dress Me by Michael Gardner. And the website is
daddydressmebymg.com.
daddydressmebymg.com. I'll make sure to have all of that in the show notes. Fellas,
Okay.
ladies listening too, make sure to reach out to my man Michael Gardner. The brother's doing amazing stuff. When you see the clips and the images and him and Ava doing their doggone thing, it's gonna blow your mind, man. And it's gonna also inspire you to find that thing inside of you that's burning, pour gasoline on it, and make something happen. So, brother, I salute you, man.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
No doubt, no doubt. Now, fellas, as always, make sure to visit blackfathersnow.com, subscribe, leave ratings, reach out to Michael Gardner again, Daddy Dress Me by MG on IG. Man, literally follow the brother. He's doing the doggone thing. Subscribe to the podcast, leave likes. It helps us to move in the search function. And I guess until next time, fellas, y'all be blessed, well, and wise. And I'll holler at you. Peace.